2021 began with what many Americans are calling the racial double standards, as evidence in the response to what began as protests outside of the Capitol building and quickly erupted into a violent attack, an insurrection that sent members of Congress into a hiding. That response, the police response, the double standards, is what we will discuss in this program. My guests are L. Joy Williams, president of the Brooklyn branch of the NAACP, Bishop Hugh Nelson, senior pastor of the Church of East Flatbush, and New York State Assemblyman Charles Barron. Also in this program, Regi Brown will have a report on the COVID vaccine fears. Joseph Biden, President Joe Biden, weeks before he officially became president, had this to say, and I quote, "No one can tell me that if it had been a group of Black Lives Matter protesters, that they would have been treated very differently than the mob that stormed the Capitol." President tweeted, "We all know that's true, and it's unacceptable, totally unacceptable." And he not only tweeted this, he had a video message. I want to give my guests 1 minute each to respond to this totally unacceptable. We can begin with any of you. Ladies first. Let's begin with Joy.
Well, I mean, if you're asking me to respond to people throwing a temper tantrum because they did not win an election, and so it's not just them not winning an election, but the second step is that no one came to save them by altering things in the election to favor them, that we had a fair and equitable election and that they lost. But I am also not surprised, because if you are a student of history, you can point to many times that resemble where we are, that any time historically marginalized folks has pushed this democracy forward, there has been a white lash where white folks have fear that someone is taking something from them, rather than people getting what they equitably deserve. And so we are in that space. If you're talking about post the emancipation of the formerly enslaved, to Reconstruction, to several civil rights movements in this country, there is always that response back as we continue to push this democracy to be more democratic. And I am not surprised, but I do believe that we have to continue to participate in making sure that we have systems in place to address their tantrums and their outrage, and to keep people safe from their violence.
Thank you. We'll be back to you shortly, but let's go to Assemblyman Barron. Your 1 minute.
Well, first of all, it's easy to see the racial discrimination in the response. The average brother and sister off the block said, if it were Black people, there would have been bodies laying all over the place. That's the easy part, Sam. What democracy, Joy? What democracy are you talking about? The democracy in America has brought poverty to our communities, has brought mass incarceration, homeless shelters, whether it's a Obama administration over what I consider a colonial capitalist system, or a neo-fascist, racist, sick Trump administration, or a neoliberal, racist Biden administration. When you look at the history of the Republicans and the Democrats, from when we first came out of slavery, we joined radical Republicans. After that, the compromise in 1887, we then abandoned them in 1931. We went with the New Deal, which was no deal for us, and went into the Democratic Party. What I'm afraid of, Sam, is that we're going to focus so much on the racial thing that everybody knows would have been different, and not the economic injustice and the lack of democratically dispersing resources to our people, no matter whether they were outside with the Trump administration or inside with Biden. Time will tell. You will see this great democracy and how much Biden will do for poverty and real issues in our community. That's the real question. Economic justice and exploitative capitalism.
Thank you, Assemblyman Charles Barron. And now let's go to Dr. Nelson, Bishop.
Thank you, Sam. It's surely a joy to join with some folks from the community I have great regards for. And this has been quite troubling watching what happened in DC. I think it is clear that racism runs through the fiber of this country. And the interesting thing for me is the level of denial to which even the church in this country goes to. And so speaking from the side of the church, it is quite disappointing to see how easily a president like President Donald Trump has maneuvered even the church. If we're the vanguard of moral standing, at least we should be able to stand outside of the political infrastructure and speak to the issues of justice and morality. Instead, the church has been co-opted and to a great degree has been used by politicians. So that's disappointing for me, but yet not surprising. And I think we can all agree, like the Assemblyman said, there are two standards in this country, and one for Blacks and one for whites. And regardless of how they may deny the experience, we know that when it comes to where the rubber meets the road, there are two different systems of justice, two different systems of enforcement. And even with COVID-19, we talk even right in New York City about the wearing masks. And we saw how our own NYPD manhandled people of color who they felt were not wearing masks. And then a couple of blocks over, we see how differently they responded when our own fellow New Yorkers in Manhattan who didn't have masks were treated somewhat with kids' gloves. So it is really the brokenness of our system.
You talked about two systems of justice. How do we get beyond this classification of two systems of justice? How do we breach that? How do we get beyond that? And this is for any of you.
Well, Sam, I think what's going on now, you're seeing a battle between two white-led parties, no matter how diverse they try to front. They're battling each other like they have historically. Black people need to look at self-determination. We need to look at ourselves as a multi-billion-dollar market income. We need to look at ourselves and look at the opportunity to now say, we need to get some land. We need to control the politics, the land, the institutions in our communities. And we need to turn more toward each other and not on each other. So I think that as they fight, we don't have to get in that, but we need to really unite within ourselves and say, we're going to look at self-determination. And it's not going to come from the Democratic Party nor the Republican Party. It's going to become from us uniting our resources, whether it's our vote, our power. Because once you have power, Sam, racism is irrelevant.
That's right.
Power is the great equalizer.
Yes, I know the NAA. Okay, go ahead, Pastor.
Well, I echo the Assemblyman because even as a clergyman, and one of the challenges I have had, I identify myself as an evangelical. But surely not what I'm seeing coming out from the South. And it's quite disappointing when you sit in the same forum with other people of faith. And we should be championing justice and equity and to see just how varied the views are. And just like the Assemblyman, I believe that we have to take ownership of our own destiny. And it's unfortunate because we have been so often divided so easily. And I try to nurture relationships across national lines. And even right in New York City, I say to my Black American friends or my Caribbean friends or my African-born friends that we live here and we have to rise above the national barriers and no longer allow the system to continue to divide us. Our destiny and welfare is wrapped in together, and it's the unity of our people which is going to make the difference.
I know that the NAACP has been preaching the message of ownership of destiny, as you mentioned, Pastor. But let's go back to you, Joy. Tell me about the work of the NAACP. And I know that you're responsible for the Brooklyn chapter. What is your organization doing?
So I'm going to say that with saying that I am only in charge of Brooklyn. So making that very specific in terms of what happens.
That's why I said Brooklyn.
Or with any other branches. But, I would, want to echo both gentlemen's comments in that, because, I would agree. I would believe that the Assemblyman Barron has much more of my interest at heart when it comes to brass tacks, given our collaborative and community organizing, rather than thinking the Democratic Party wholesale would. And we have to, as we are continuing to build power, which we have economic power, we have power. What the issue is being able to wield it and use the power and the resources we have that affect change for our communities, and acquire the resources and land to be able to affect change for our community, rather than doing so for our own individual gain. And really think about electoral politics. Something that I tell the branch and others is that electoral politics, electing one president, electing one mayor, that's not going to free us. That electoral politics is not the key to freedom. It is a tool in our toolbox of additional options that we use for the betterment of our people and for the betterment of our community. And I think what people believe is that if you elect one person and then walk away, or don't participate in not only your community, but also in the governance, that we then allow other people to dictate to us what are the issues that are of concern, what is important to us, and what is acceptable in terms of accountability. So people will dangle, oh, well, you got this vice president, and you got individual people who look like you or come from your community in these respective positions. That's not it. I don't care if the person that's head of agriculture or a committee looks like me, if they are not implementing policies that allow for communities, one, to eat, one, to make sure that they can take care of our families, and continue to build power and self-sustainability. So it's continuing to organize and expand those who are knowledgeable and engaged in the process, and recognizing that electoral politics, electing someone, is not the ticket to freedom. It is but one tool that we use in our toolbox.
The president talks a lot about and by the time we air this program, he will be past president. But Mr. Trump talks a lot about making America great again. And that upsets me. And I want to get a response from you about this, make America great again, especially for us Black folk.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think the Assemblyman alluded to this in his opening as well. We have to be very clear in terms of the America that was built, who it was built for. And that's not only a racial lens, but an economic lens. The country with the American exceptionalism and America Great Again, all of that are very, I wouldn't even say dog whistles. They are very loud messages to people of wealth, and white supremacy. And we, historical marginalized folks in this country, have continued to expand to make sure that more people are included in the process and it's equitable. But that is all focused on centralizing power, whether it's economic power, political power, or what have you, for folks that have historically been favored, and that is of whiteness and of wealth.
Charles, I know you talked about the need for economic development and so on, but let's go back to the root of all this about making America great again. And does that message say anything to people of color, Black and brown people?
That's not the problem. There are plenty of people that want to make America white again. It didn't start with Trump. He got 74 million votes. Those folk didn't just pop up, when he ran. They've been around. Sarah Palin got 55 million votes with when she ran. So we need to look at the root causes. The reason why I say I'm a Black radical / revolutionary is not to promote some empty rhetoric, but to say it's the system. It's not just the changing of administrations or complexions. I'm not interested in just changing the complexion of leadership. I'm looking for changing the direction of leadership. We need to move more toward an egalitarian, socialistic society that is more equitable in distributing wealth. Even Dr. Martin Luther King, during his last years on earth, became anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, and he was not dealing with the system. In 1956, W.E.B. Du Bois said, I'm not voting because I don't want to vote for the lesser of two evils, and there's two evils in the Republicans and the Democrats. This is W.E.B. Du Bois. Look at the system that we're dealing with. And that is a system that has Joe Biden there now. We're focusing so much on Trump, and we should, to some extent. He is a misogynistic, xenophobic, he's all of that and some, a madman. But don't let Biden off the hook. This is the danger when Democrats get in office. When Obama got in office, we stopped struggling. When Clinton got in office, Bill, we stopped struggling, even though he put more of us in jail. So I'm concerned, Sam, that we're so focused on Trump. We've been Trumpetized to the point where we're not looking at Joe Biden in his past, who passed the crime bill that put us in jail, who was against busing, who was for the wars abroad. He and Obama didn't indict any police officers for killing us for 8 years, even though we had a Black president and a Black attorney general, and we had Ferguson with Brown, we have Trayvon Martin, we have poor little Tamir Rice. Not one move from the Obama administration until his little bourgeois friend, Skip Gates, got roughed up by the police in his house, and they went to the White House and had some beer. So I'm concerned that we don't say to Biden, in your first 100 years, stop playing games. Cancel that debt for the students. He's backing away from that. Look at his appointments. His appointments signify business as usual. We better keep our foot to the pedal to the metal, foot to the whatever you say. We need to keep it on that pedal, because Biden's going to get a pass talking about racism and not talking about his exploitative capitalist agenda. He's going to get a pass with us focusing on Trump.
We've seen the power of the church, but we also saw this division between the white church and the Black church. The white church's support of Trump. And as we talk about moving forward, how do we get the church together, Bishop Nelson?
And that's an excellent question. I think the challenge many times, and probably it has to do even with our training, because so many pastors and so many churches focus so much on heaven that they miss the opportunity of a better quality of life on earth. And so, yes, there is the hope that after we die, our faith tells us of this place called heaven. At the same time, while we're here on earth, we have a responsibility to advocate for the welfare of our community. And it's a different thinking. So there's some of our churches that because of their training, avoid the issue of politics. I don't think we have a choice because in truth, our faith should be activated to standing up. And that's what we talk. So, I mean, some people may think I'm a little radical. I don't think I'm radical. I just believe that at the end of the day, when this journey is over, if the next generation is no stronger, if they're no more secure economically, we would have failed them. So again, we talk about understanding the system, because you use the phrase about making America great again. And I think most people realize it's like turning the clock backwards. But the challenge is, even for churches, and I challenge some of my colleagues, we should be banking with the same bank. I mean, think about it, whether you meet on Sundays or on a Saturday, our church is dispersed in theology. In our community, you always find several churches, but we are no stronger because we have never learned to collaborate. We have never learned to bring our pieces to the table for the common good. So to some degree, on the bigger scope, and like the Assemblyman says, we can make Donald Trump the enemy, but he represents a significant portion of our country. And so even if he's removed tomorrow, the white racist undercurrents, they don't disappear. They're still working, even in our police, our banking. So it's coming to the table like this. And so so even though I'm a Christian, I have also nurtured relationship with members of the Black Muslim. The idea is we may not have the same faith context, but we don't have the luxury of not working together for the common good of our community. And they have successfully divided us. And sad to say, we're easily divided. And we have to recognize, I believe, that if we have a common enemy that has the common goal of diminishing and destroying our effectiveness, then we can no longer participate in our own destruction. If I would just add one point, I think the challenge too often in our community, it takes a crisis for us to come together for dialogue. So if there's no existential threat, we just continue to plow down the way as if things are normal. We should have an ongoing dialogue to change the structure so that at least our economic resources can work for our benefit.
Assemblyman Barron, let's talk about that structure. Earlier you spoke about we have to have this socialist attitude, and you know how the Republicans feel and say and respond to the word socialist.
So
Charles?
what, Sam? Who cares how they respond? The only thing I care about is how our people respond. And if we explain to our people that when we say socialism, we mean free healthcare, free education. When we say socialism, we mean that the power and resources is within the people, not the state, and that they'll have self-determination over the economics. Then our people are all right with socialism. As a matter of fact, socialism has taken on a new tone across the nation now. I remember years ago, you couldn't even say you was a liberal, a tax and spend liberal. So you have to be a leader, and you have to be able to present it in the way that it's acceptable. But I agree with Joy that politics is no panacea. We're not going to be able to vote our way to freedom. We have to do some things outside of the political arena. And I think politics are local. That when we get these local seats, we'll have more influence over the $180 billion state budget and the $90 billion city budget than we will over Biden doing the right thing.
Okay, Joy, I think you've got the last word.
Well, I don't want folks to be despondent about what is playing out on television, or even if you happen to have people who work down in DC and believe that it's just in other places and it doesn't happen here in New York, because as the assemblyman and as the pastor have said, those folks live among us, even here in the state of New York. What we need to be focused on is what is beneficial and empowering to our people and to our community, and organizing locally, taking political power locally to be able to take care of the folks that we love and hold dear.
Well, thank you very much, L. Joy Williams. Joy, you have to tell me what the L is for, and I am very curious about that. But L. Joy Williams, who is president of the Brooklyn branch of the NAACP, thank you. Thank you to New York Assemblyman Charles Barron. And thank you to Bishop Dr. Hugh Nelson, who is senior pastor of the Church of God of East Flatbush. Thank you for allowing us to have this very vibrant conversation. And now let's go over to Regi Brown.
After watching the breach of the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. this past January, my son turned to me and asked, "Dad, who are we that we would do something like that?" I turned to my son and I said, "Who are we? Don't get it twisted, son. We are doctors and nurses, school teachers, mothers and fathers, displaying powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men." Okay, that last part may have been a bit much, but my point was that we are the heroes who have died, been beaten, choked out, tear gassed, jailed, and struggled. We are the heroes that fight without the urge to surpass all others, no matter the cost, but the urge to serve others, whatever the cost. We are heroes because we are showing every man, woman, and child that the struggle is real and worth fighting for. We are ordinary individuals who find the strength to preserve and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. We are heroes. Where would we be today if not for the heroes of 2020? My name is Regi Brown, and this is Brooklyn 45.
Brooklyn 45 is a 501c3 not-for-profit, and we welcome your support. Check out our website, brooklyn45.com, and feel free to donate or share it with your friends and family. Have any comments or questions? Send them to our Facebook, facebook.com/Brooklyn45TV. If you have any questions or topics you think we should cover next, shoot me an email over at brooklyn45tv@gmail.com. Thank you again for watching.